At Easter dinner, my daughter Victoria looked me straight in the eye and said, "You ruin everything, Dad. Everything you touch turns to ash." I didn't argue with her. I just sat there, fork halfway to my mouth, wondering how we'd gotten to this point. But 3 weeks later, when I found the insurance papers hidden in her old bedroom and discovered what she'd been planning, I realized her words weren't just anger. They were a confession. And that Easter dinner, it was supposed to be my last. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The unexpected invitation. I should have known something was different when Victoria called me 2 weeks before Easter, practically begging me to come to her house in Riverstone Hills for dinner. My daughter hadn't invited me for a holiday meal in over 3 years, not since the incident at Thanksgiving 2020 when she accused me of embarrassing her in front of her colleagues. "Dad, I really want you there," she had said, her voice carrying that sweet tone she used to use as a child when she wanted something. "I know we haven't been close lately, but I want to change that. Family should be together on Easter." I was so hungry for reconciliation that I ignored the warning bells. I'd been living alone in my small house on Elm Street since Martha passed away 4 years ago, and the loneliness had become a weight I carried everywhere. My son Gregory lived clear across the country in Seattle with his own family, visiting maybe once a year if I was lucky. Victoria was all I had left in Riverstone. "Of course, sweetheart," I'd said, probably too eagerly. "What can I bring?" "Nothing, Dad. Just yourself. I want to cook everything from scratch like Mom used to do." That should have been another red flag. Martha had been gone for 4 years, and Victoria had never shown the slightest interest in her mother's old-fashioned cooking methods when Martha was alive. But desperate fathers hear what they want to hear. The house on Riverstone Hills. Victoria's house sat at the end of Magnolia Drive, one of those sprawling ranch-style homes with the perfectly manicured lawn and the circular driveway. Her husband Marcus worked in corporate finance, pulling in the kind of money that made their lifestyle possible. They bought the house 3 years ago, right after Marcus's promotion, and I'd only been inside once, briefly, for their housewarming party. The dining room table was set with china I didn't recognize, deep blue porcelain with silver trim that caught the afternoon light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, crystal stemware that probably cost more than my monthly pension, fresh white roses in a tall crystal vase, their perfume almost overwhelming in the closed space. "Dad, you look good," Victoria said when she answered the door, though her smile seemed rehearsed. She wore an elegant burgundy dress that complemented her dark blonde hair, styled perfectly despite the fact that she'd supposedly been cooking all morning. I'd worn my best navy blazer, the one I'd bought for Gregory's wedding 3 years ago, and standing in my daughter's designer kitchen, I felt underdressed and out of place. "Thank you, sweetheart. The house looks beautiful. You've really outdone yourself." Marcus appeared from the family room, drink already in hand though it was barely noon. "William, good to see you. Can I get you something to drink? Scotch? Beer?" "Coffee would be great, thanks." But Victoria interrupted. "Actually, Dad, I made you something special. Remember that herbal tea blend you used to drink? I found something similar at that gourmet market downtown." She handed me a steaming mug before I could respond. The liquid was amber-colored with a slightly bitter smell that I didn't recognize. "I don't remember drinking herbal tea," I said, taking the mug to be polite. "Oh, you did, all the time when Gregory and I were little. You said it helped you relax after long days at the plant." I took a small sip. The taste was earthy, with an aftertaste that lingered unpleasantly on my tongue. "It's different. Drink up, Dad. It's good for you. Full of antioxidants and natural minerals." The grandchildren. Victoria's children, Emma and Jacob, came running from the backyard like a small tornado. At 10 and 8 years old, respectively, they were bundles of energy with their father's dark hair and their mother's blue eyes. "Grandpa William!" Emma threw herself at my legs with the kind of enthusiasm that made my heart ache. When had I become Grandpa William instead of just Grandpa? "Hello, my little angels. My goodness, you've both grown so much since Christmas." I set down the tea mug to hug them properly. "Mom made us practice our table manners," Jacob announced, with the brutal honesty of children. "She said you were coming and we had to be perfect." "That's right," Victoria said, her voice carrying that warning edge. "Today is special. We need to make sure Grandpa William has a wonderful visit." Wonderful. Perfect. Those words again. Everything was supposed to be flawless. "Can you come see my art project?" Emma asked, tugging on my hand. "I made a painting of our family." "After dinner, sweetheart," Victoria interrupted. "Grandpa William needs to drink his tea and relax. He's had a long drive." It was a 20-minute drive from my house, but I didn't correct her. I noticed she kept glancing at the mug in my hands, as if checking to see how much I'd consumed.
"Victoria, please, not in front of the children." "Why not? They should know who you really are. They should know that their grandfather let their grandmother die alone and afraid because he couldn't handle watching her fade away." The dining room fell silent, except for the soft tick of the mantel clock. Emma and Jacob had stopped eating entirely, their eyes wide with fear and confusion at the adults' raised voices. "I never left your mother alone," I said quietly, though my voice was shakier than I wanted it to be. "I was with her every day until the end." "Physically, maybe, but emotionally? You checked out the moment the doctor said dementia. You couldn't handle that the woman you married was disappearing bit by bit, so you just withdrew." The accusation cut deep because there was truth in it. Martha's decline had been devastating to watch. The woman who'd been my partner for 35 years, who'd raised our children with wisdom and grace, slowly forgetting who we were, becoming frightened and confused by her own family. I was trying to stay strong for all of us. Strong? Is that what you call it when you spent more time in the garage than in the house? When you stopped talking to her because you said it was too hard to repeat yourself over and over? When you hired caregivers to do what you should have been doing yourself? The caregivers were professionals. They knew how to help her better than I did. They were strangers, Dad, and she knew it even when she couldn't remember our names. She'd asked for you, and you'd be out there with your woodworking, pretending you couldn't hear her calling. My vision blurred, though whether from tears or the increasing dizziness, I couldn't tell. The room seemed to be tilting slightly. "I loved your mother more than life itself," I whispered. "But you loved your comfort more. You loved your routine more. You loved avoiding difficult conversations more than you loved being present for the hardest moments of her life." The explosion. Marcus had gone pale, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. The children looked like they wanted to disappear under the table. "Victoria, that's enough," Marcus said quietly, but she was just getting started. "You know what the worst part is, Dad? She died thinking you didn't love her anymore. In her lucid moments, she'd tell me how much she missed the man she married, how she felt like she was living with a stranger who couldn't wait for her to be gone. That's not true. But even as I said it, I wondered if it was. Had Martha felt abandoned in those final months? Had my attempts to protect myself from the pain of watching her decline made her suffering worse? It is true, and you know it. Just like you know that Gregory moved across the country partly to get away from the guilt of watching you fail Mom. Just like you know that I stopped visiting because I couldn't stand to see what you'd become. The dizziness was getting worse. I gripped the table to steady myself, but my hands were trembling noticeably now. "I did the best I could," I managed to say. "No, Dad, you did the easiest thing you could. There's a difference." The devastating accusation. Victoria stood up abruptly, her face flushed with years of accumulated anger and grief. "You want to know what I really think? I think you were relieved when Mom died. I think you were grateful that you didn't have to pretend to be a devoted husband anymore. I think her death was the solution to a problem you didn't want to deal with." "Victoria!" Marcus's voice was sharp with warning, but she was beyond stopping. "You ruin everything, Dad. Everything you touch turns to ash. You ruined Mom's final years by abandoning her when she needed you most. You ruined our family by making us choose between taking care of her and taking care of ourselves. And now you're here, expecting us to welcome you back because enough time has passed that we should all just forget how badly you failed the person who loved you most."
The room seemed to spin more violently. I could feel sweat beating on my forehead despite the cool air conditioning. My heart was racing and there was a metallic taste in my mouth. "I think I need some air," I said, but my voice sounded far away, even to my own ears. "Dad?" Despite her anger, Victoria's voice carried a note of concern. "Are you all right?" "Just feeling a bit lightheaded. Maybe I should go home." But when I tried to stand, the dizziness intensified dramatically. The room tilted like a ship in rough seas, and I had to grip the table with both hands to keep from falling. "Dad!" This time, Victoria's alarm sounded genuine. "Marcus, help him!" Marcus was beside me in an instant, his strong hand steadying me as I swayed on my feet. The children had jumped up from their seats, their earlier fear replaced by worry for their grandfather. "I'm okay," I insisted, though I clearly wasn't. My legs felt weak, and there was a strange buzzing in my ears. "You don't look okay, Grandpa William," Emma said, with the brutal honesty of children. "You're really sweaty and pale." Victoria was suddenly all maternal concern, the anger that had twisted her faces replaced by what looked like genuine panic. "Dad, sit back down. Marcus, get him some water." "No, I should go home. I just need to rest in my own bed." "You can't drive like this. Look at your hands. They're shaking." She was right. The tremor in my hands had become pronounced, and I felt increasingly disoriented.
Maybe I could call a cab. "Don't be ridiculous. You'll stay here tonight. I'll make up the guest bed." Something about her sudden shift from rage to solicitous care made me uneasy. The Victoria, who just eviscerated me emotionally, was now fussing over me like a concerned daughter. "I don't want to be a bother." "You're not a bother. You're my father, and you're clearly unwell. It would be irresponsible to let you drive home in this condition." The strange kindness. What happened next only added to my confusion. Victoria's entire demeanor had transformed. She helped me to the living room couch, brought me a glass of ice water, and even asked Marcus to turn down the air conditioning because she noticed I was shivering. "Dad, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said those things about Mom. I don't know what came over me." "Maybe some things needed to be said," I replied. Though I was having trouble focusing on the conversation, the room kept swimming in and out of clarity. "No, it wasn't fair. Mom's death was hard on all of us, and grief makes people say cruel things they don't mean." The children had crowded around us, still worried about my sudden illness. Emma brought me one of her stuffed animals, a worn teddy bear that she said always made her feel better when she was sick. "Can Grandpa William stay for movie night?" Jacob asked. "We were going to watch that superhero movie he likes." "Of course," Victoria smiled, but something in her expression didn't match her tone. Family should stick together when someone isn't feeling well. Marcus was watching his wife with an odd expression, as if he was seeing something in her behavior that concerned him. "Victoria, maybe we should call a doctor," he suggested quietly. "Your father's symptoms seem pretty severe." "I'm sure it's just stress from the argument yesterday. A good night's sleep will probably help tremendously." The dessert insistence. Despite my protests that I couldn't possibly eat another bite, Victoria insisted on bringing out dessert. A beautiful chocolate cake with rich ganache frosting and fresh strawberry garnish. "I made this especially for you, Dad, your favorite." I couldn't remember chocolate cake being my particular favorite, but I didn't want to start another confrontation, especially with the children watching so eagerly. "It's delicious, sweetheart. You've really outdone yourself with everything today." "I'm so glad you like it. Have some more. You need to keep your strength up." "I really can't. I'm still feeling quite queasy." "Just a few more bites. Please. The chocolate will help stabilize your blood sugar." There was that desperate tone again, the same one she'd used when insisting I finish the herbal tea. Combined with the way she watched every bite I took, it was starting to make me genuinely uncomfortable. I managed a few more mouthfuls before setting down my fork.
I'm sorry, honey. I just can't manage anymore. That's okay, Dad. Let's get you settled upstairs so you can rest. The guest room. The guest room was tastefully decorated in neutral tones, with a comfortable king bed and an ensuite bathroom. Victoria brought me pajamas that Marcus had outgrown, a glass of water, and some antacid tablets. There are fresh towels in the bathroom if you want to shower, and there's a heating pad in the closet if your back is bothering you. Thank you, sweetheart. You're being very kind. She hesitated at the doorway. Dad, I meant what I said earlier, not the cruel things, but about loving you. Whatever problems we've had, that's never changed. I love you too, Victoria, more than you'll ever know. After she left, I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to process the evening. The violent argument had felt like years of accumulated resentment finally boiling over. But the sudden shift to concerned caregiving felt almost more unsettling than the anger had been. And underneath it all was the growing certainty that something was physically wrong with me, beyond simple stress or emotional exhaustion. The sleepless night. I woke several times during the night with nausea and cold sweats. My heart felt like it was beating irregularly, and there was a persistent metallic taste in my mouth that no amount of water could wash away. By morning, I felt significantly worse than I had the night before. Victoria brought me breakfast in bed, toast and tea, the same bitter herbal blend from the previous day. You still look pretty rough, Dad. Maybe you should see Dr. Patterson when you get home. I think you're right. This doesn't feel like any illness I've had before. It's probably just a reaction to stress. The argument yesterday was pretty intense. She was right about the stress, but something told me this was more than emotional aftershocks. My body felt like it was betraying me in fundamental ways. Are you sure you feel up to driving? You still look pretty shaky. The tremor in my hands had gotten worse overnight, and my coordination felt off. Maybe Marcus could give me a ride home. Of course. He's got a conference call, but it can wait. William, he said, Victoria was right about seeing a doctor. You really don't look well at all. I'll call Dr. Patterson's office as soon as they open. But even as I said that, I wondered if a regular doctor would be able to diagnose what was wrong with me. This felt different from any illness I'd ever experienced. More of systemic, more wrong in ways I couldn't articulate. The growing suspicion. Over the next few days, instead of improving, my condition deteriorated steadily. The tremors became more pronounced. I had trouble keeping food down. My heart seemed to race at random intervals, and I found myself breathless after minimal exertion. On Wednesday, I called in sick to my part-time job at the hardware store for the third consecutive day. My boss, Jerry, was concerned, but understanding. "Bill, you sound terrible. Have you seen a doctor?" "I have an appointment this afternoon." "Good. This isn't like you to be down for so long." Sitting in Dr. Patterson's waiting room, I found myself thinking about Easter dinner. About Victoria's elaborate preparations, the strange tea she'd insisted I drink, the way she'd watched me eat both the main course and dessert with such intensity. About her words, "Everything you touch turns to ash." And for the first time, a truly terrifying thought crept into my mind. What if she hadn't been speaking metaphorically? The doctor's concern. Dr. Patterson had been my physician for 15 years, ever since I'd switched insurance plans during one of Consolidated Manufacturing's cost-cutting initiatives. He was a straightforward man who'd guided me through Martha's illness and my own adjustment to widowerhood. "William, you look quite unwell. Tell me about these symptoms." I described the tremors, the nausea, the heart palpitations, the general feeling of weakness that seemed to be progressing rather than improving. "When did this start?" Sunday evening, after Easter dinner at my daughter's house. He made notes while I talked, occasionally asking follow-up questions about my medical history and current medications. Any new prescriptions? Changes in diet? Unusual stress? The dinner was emotionally difficult. My daughter and I had a significant argument about my late wife, but nothing else unusual that I can think of. I'd like to run some comprehensive blood work. These symptoms could indicate several different conditions, but I want to rule out the more serious possibilities first. As he prepared the blood draw, I found myself staring at the dark red liquid filling the vials. Such small containers, but potentially holding answers to questions I wasn't sure I was ready to confront. Dr. Patterson, these symptoms, could they be caused by something I ingested? He looked up sharply. What kind of ingestion are you thinking about? I don't know. Something toxic, maybe? My daughter served me some herbal tea I'd never had before, and I trailed off, realizing how paranoid I sounded. William, if you suspect you've been poisoned, that's something we need to take very seriously. I'm going to add some additional tests to check for common toxins. The word poisoned hung in the air between us like an accusation I wasn't ready to make. The waiting game. That evening, alone in my quiet house on Elm Street, I tried to make sense of everything. The argument had felt genuine. Victoria's anger about Martha's final years had been simmering for months, if not years. But the sudden shift to solicitous concern, the insistence that I stay overnight, the way she'd watched me eat both the main course and dessert with such intensity. About her words, everything you touch turns to ash. My rational mind told me I was being paranoid, that grief and stress could indeed cause physical symptoms, but my gut was telling me something different. I made myself soup from a can and managed to keep most of it down, though my hands shook as I held the spoon. Around 9 o'clock, my phone rang. Victoria's name appeared on the caller ID. "Hi, Dad. How are you feeling today?" "Not much better, I'm afraid. I saw Dr. Patterson." A pause that lasted just a beat too long. "What did he say?" "He's running some tests. Should have results in a couple of days." "Tests for what, exactly?" There was something in her tone, not quite panic, but something sharper than casual concern. "Blood work to rule out various conditions. Nothing specific yet." Another pause. "Dad, I've been thinking about Sunday, about the things I said about Mom. I feel terrible about it." "Don't worry about it, sweetheart. Sometimes difficult truths need to be spoken. I want to make it up to you. Maybe I could bring you some soup, help take care of you while you're not feeling well?" The offer was tempting. I felt weak and isolated in the empty house, and the prospect of my daughter's care was appealing after years of distance between us. But something held me back. Maybe it was the way she'd asked about the specific tests, or the strange desperation in her voice when she offered to bring food. "I'm sure, but thank you for caring enough to call." After I hung up, I sat in my quiet living room and wondered why I'd declined her offer. Wasn't this what I'd wanted? My daughter showing genuine concern for my welfare? But the feeling persisted that accepting her help might be the last mistake I ever make. The next morning, Dr. Patterson called with my blood test results. His voice was serious, clinical, the tone doctors use when they're about to change your life forever. "William, I need you to come in immediately. There are some very concerning findings in your blood work that we need to discuss face to face." What kind of findings? I'd rather not go into details over the phone. Can you be here within the hour? And William, if you suspect someone has intentionally poisoned you, you need to contact the police immediately. As I hung up the phone, my hand shaking worse than ever, I thought about Victoria's Easter dinner invitation, her elaborate preparations, her insistence that I drink the tea and eat everything she'd prepared, her sudden transformation from rage to desperate concern. And I realized that maybe my paranoia wasn't paranoia at all. Maybe it was the only thing that was going to keep me alive long enough to find out the truth. Dr. Patterson's office felt different that Thursday morning. The usual calm atmosphere was replaced by an urgency I could feel the moment I walked through the door. His receptionist, Nancy, who normally greeted me with small talk about the weather or my late wife, barely looked up from her computer. "Mr. Harrison, go straight back to room 3. Dr. Patterson is waiting for you." My legs felt unsteady as I walked down the familiar hallway. The tremor in my hands had gotten worse overnight, and I'd thrown up twice before leaving the house. Whatever was happening to me was accelerating. Dr. Patterson was standing when I entered, his usually jovial demeanor replaced by the grave expression doctors wear when they're about to deliver life-changing news. Behind him stood a woman I didn't recognize, mid-40s, professional-looking, with the kind of alert eyes that suggested law enforcement. "William, thank you for coming in so quickly. This is Detective Sarah Chen from the Riverstone Police Department. I asked her to be here because of what we found in your blood work." My knees nearly buckled. "Police?" "Please, sit down," Dr. Patterson gestured to the examination table. "We need to discuss this immediately." Detective Chen stepped forward, her voice gentle but authoritative. "Mr. Harrison, I know this is alarming, but Dr. Patterson contacted us because your blood tests show clear evidence of poisoning. We need to talk about what you've eaten or drunk in the past week." The word poisoning hit me like a physical blow, even though part of me had been expecting it. "What kind of poisoning?" Dr. Patterson consulted his clipboard. "Your blood shows elevated levels of several compounds consistent with plant-based toxins. Specifically, we found traces of cardiac glycosides and alkaloids that don't occur naturally in the human body. In layman's terms, someone gave you a cocktail of plant extracts that are slowly shutting down your cardiovascular and nervous systems. If we hadn't caught this now, you probably wouldn't have survived another week." The room seemed to tilt. I gripped the sides of the examination table to steady myself. How is that possible? These particular toxins are found in several common plants: foxglove, oleander, yew berries, castor beans. They're often used in herbal preparations, which is why they might not be immediately detectable to taste, especially if masked with strong flavors. My mind flashed back to Victoria's insistence that I drink the bitter herbal tea, the way she'd watched me consume every drop, the strange aftertaste in the elaborate meal. "Dr. Patterson," I said slowly, "when you say herbal preparations, someone with knowledge of plant toxicology could easily extract and concentrate these compounds. Mixed into tea or food, they'd be virtually undetectable until symptoms appeared." Detective Chen leaned forward. "Mr. Harrison, I need you to think carefully. Who has access to your food and drink? Who might have reason to want to harm you?" The painful realization. The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire I didn't want to acknowledge. For 3 days, I'd been pushing away the growing suspicion that Victoria might be involved. Even with the evidence mounting, the strange tea, her intense watching while I ate, the sudden shift from anger to solicitous care, part of me couldn't accept that my own daughter might be trying to kill me. "My daughter," I whispered.
She made me herbal tea on Easter Sunday, insisted I drink it, said it was good for me. Detective Chen made notes. Tell me about this tea. I described the bitter taste, the amber color, Victoria's insistence that I finish it despite my reluctance. I told them about the elaborate meal, the way she'd watched me eat, her sudden transformation from anger to caring concern. She kept saying I looked unwell and should stay the night, made me breakfast the next morning with more of the same tea. Dr. Patterson and Detective Chan exchanged glances. Mr. Harrison, the detective said gently, we're going to need to treat this as an attempted murder investigation. Is there anyone who can verify what happened at this dinner? Her husband, Marcus, was there. The children, too, but they're so young, I don't know what they would have noticed. What about motive? Has your daughter expressed anger towards you, financial difficulties, issues with inheritance? The conversation from Easter Sunday came flooding back. Victoria's rage about Martha's final years, her accusations that I'd failed as a husband and father, the venom in her voice when she said I ruined everything I touched. We had a terrible argument, I said. She blamed me for my mother's death, said I abandoned her when she was dying of dementia. She was angrier than I'd ever seen her. The investigation began. Detective Chen spent the next hour taking my statement. Every detail of Easter Sunday, from Victoria's unexpected invitation to her insistence that I stay overnight. The way she'd called later to offer homemade soup, her strange questions about what tests Dr. Patterson was running.
Mr. Harrison, I need to ask about your financial situation. Life insurance, will, property, anything your daughter might inherit. The question made my stomach clench. I have a modest life insurance policy through my pension plan, about $200,000. The house is worth maybe $180,000. Nothing that would make someone rich. Sometimes it's not about getting rich, Detective Chen said grimly. Sometimes it's about solving immediate financial problems. Do you know if your daughter and her family are having money troubles? I thought about Marcus's job in corporate finance, their expensive house in Riverstone Hills, the designer clothes and luxury cars. They always seemed comfortable, but I don't know their actual financial situation. We'll look into that. In the meantime, I need you to avoid all contact with your daughter and her family. Don't answer her calls, don't accept any food or drink from her. Don't meet with her alone. Can you do that? The thought of cutting off contact with Victoria, even under these circumstances, was devastating. She was one of only 2 children I had left in the world. Detective, isn't there a chance this could be some kind of mistake? Maybe the tea was contaminated accidentally, or— Mr. Harrison, she interrupted gently. The combination of toxins in your blood was not accidental. This required knowledge, planning, and deliberate intent to cause harm. I'm sorry, but we have to treat your daughter as a suspect. The medical intervention. Dr. Patterson explained the treatment plan. We're going to start you on activated charcoal to help absorb any remaining toxins in your system, IV fluids to support your kidneys and help flush out what's already in your bloodstream, cardiac monitoring because these particular poisons can cause dangerous heart rhythm abnormalities. How long before I start feeling better? It depends on how much you ingested and how long it's been building up in your system. If you'd continue to consume contaminated food or drink, the damage could have been irreversible. As it is, you should start improving within 24 to 48 hours, but full recovery might take weeks. They admitted me to the hospital that afternoon. As I lay in the narrow bed with an IV drip feeding into my arm, I tried to process the reality of my situation. My daughter, the little girl I'd taught to ride a bike, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, who cried in my arms when her first boyfriend broke her heart, had apparently tried to murder me. The cardiac monitor beeped steadily beside me.
an electronic reminder that my heart was still working despite Victoria's efforts to stop it. The phone calls. My phone rang 3 times that evening. All 3 calls were from Victoria. I let them go to voicemail, as Detective Chen had instructed, but I couldn't resist listening to the messages. The first one was light, casual. "Hi, Dad, just checking to see how you're feeling. Call me back when you get a chance." The second was more concerned. "Dad, I'm starting to worry. You're not answering your phone. Are you okay? Should I come check on you?" The third was urgent, almost panicked. "Dad, please call me back. Marcus drove by your house and your car isn't there. Where are you? I need to know you're safe." I played the messages for Detective Chen when she stopped by that evening. She listened with a grim expression. "She's fishing," Detective Chen said, "trying to find out if you figured out what happened. The fact that she had her husband drive by your house suggests she's monitoring your movements. Or she's genuinely worried about me?" Detective Chen gave me a look that was both kind and pitying. "Mr. Harrison, I know this is difficult to accept, but genuine concern doesn't usually follow attempted murder by a few days. She's trying to gauge whether her plan worked." The research phase. While I was in the hospital, Detective Chen and her team were busy investigating Victoria's background. She returned the next morning with a manila folder full of information that painted a disturbing picture of my daughter's recent life. "Mr. Harrison, your daughter and her husband are in serious financial trouble. Marcus was fired from his job 6 months ago for embezzling client funds. They're 3 months behind on their mortgage, maxed out on credit cards, and facing foreclosure within 60 days. The news hit me like a physical blow. Fired? But Victoria said he was doing well, getting promoted. She's been lying to maintain appearances. They've been living off credit and dwindling savings since November. The life insurance money from your death would solve all their immediate problems." Detective Chen opened the folder and showed me printed pages. We also found evidence that Victoria has been researching plant toxicology online. Her computer search history includes multiple queries about cardiac glycosides, lethal dosages, and methods of extraction. She visited several forums dedicated to herbal medicine and natural remedies. When? Starting about 2 months ago, right around the time she would have learned that the bank was initiating foreclosure proceedings. The timeline was damning. Victoria hadn't reached out to reconcile with me out of love or regret about our estranged relationship. She had planned Easter dinner as an opportunity to begin poisoning me. "There's more," Detective Chen continued. "We found receipts for several plants and herbal supplies purchased from online sources: foxglove seeds, dried oleander leaves, and castor beans. All of them contain the toxins we found in your blood."
Recovery wasn't just physical. It was emotional and psychological too. I started seeing a counselor to help me process the betrayal and the new reality of raising grandchildren at 71 years old. Survivor's guilt is common in cases like yours, Dr. Martinez explained during one of our sessions. You're alive because you got medical help in time, but your daughter is in prison, your grandchildren are traumatized, and your family structure has been destroyed. It's natural to feel guilty about surviving when the cost was so high. Sometimes I wonder if I should have just let it happen. If I died, Victoria wouldn't be in prison. The kids would still have their mother. But they'd also have learned that problems are solved through violence and deception. By surviving and seeking justice, you've shown them that actions have consequences and that wrong behavior doesn't get rewarded, even when it comes from someone we love. The letters. Victoria wrote to me from prison every month. I didn't respond to the first dozen letters, but eventually I began writing back. Not forgiveness, I wasn't ready for that, but communication. Emma and Jacob needed to understand their mother as a complete person, not just as the woman who'd tried to murder my grandfather. In her letters, Victoria described the prison therapy programs she was attending, her work in the prison library, her slow journey toward understanding the magnitude of what she'd done.
"I think about Easter dinner every day," she wrote in one letter. "Not just the poisoning, but the things I said about Mom. I was so angry about losing her, about feeling like you got to grieve while I had to be strong. I blamed you for her death because it was easier than accepting that sometimes terrible things just happen." Her insights came too late to undo the damage, but they helped me understand the roots of her rage. Victoria hadn't just tried to kill me for money. She'd tried to kill the person she blamed for her mother's suffering. The new normal. On the 3rd anniversary of Easter dinner, I sat on my new front porch watching Emma and Jacob play in the yard. They were laughing, arguing over the rules of some game they'd invented, completely absorbed in the moment. Victoria had said I ruined everything I touched, that everything turned to ash in my hands. But looking at these resilient, loving children who'd survived their mother's betrayal and learned to thrive despite it, I saw something different. I saw growth from destruction, hope from tragedy, a family rebuilt from the ashes of the old one. Victoria was serving her sentence, learning to take responsibility for her choices. Emma and Jacob were growing up with a clear understanding that love doesn't excuse harmful behavior. And I was learning that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is surviving their attempt to destroy you. The final message. 5 years after the trial, Victoria was up for her first parole hearing. She asked me to write a victim impact statement that would be considered by the parole board. I sat at my kitchen table with a blank piece of paper, trying to find words that balanced justice with mercy, accountability with forgiveness. To the parole board. My daughter Victoria attempted to murder me because she believed I had failed her family. Her method was slow poisoning, designed to look like natural causes. Her motivation was financial desperation, combined with years of accumulated resentment. I survived because I sought medical help in time, but the real victims of Victoria's crime are her children, who lost their mother to prison and their sense of security to her betrayal. Victoria has served 5 years of her sentence. In that time, she has participated in therapy, taken responsibility for her actions, and maintained a relationship with her children through letters and visits. She has expressed genuine remorse and insight into the factors that led to her crime. I do not believe Victoria is still a danger to society, but I also believe she needs to serve more time before she can be safely released. Her children need more years to mature and process their trauma before their mother returns to their lives. I recommend that Victoria serve at least half of her original sentence before being considered for parole. This would allow her children to reach adulthood with a clear understanding of consequences and accountability. Despite everything that happened, Victoria is still my daughter and Emma and Jacob's mother. I want her to have the opportunity to rebuild her life, but that opportunity must be earned through full acceptance of responsibility and sufficient time to demonstrate genuine change. The conclusion. The parole board denied Victoria's first request, but she would be eligible to apply again in 3 years. By then, Emma would be in college and Jacob would be in high school. They would be old enough to make informed decisions about their relationship with their mother. As I sealed the letter and prepared to mail it to the parole board, I reflected on how much had changed since that Easter dinner. Victoria had been wrong when she said, "I ruined everything I touched." Sometimes the greatest act of love is surviving someone's attempt to destroy you. Sometimes refusing to become ash is how you prove that love is stronger than hate, that accountability is more important than forgiveness, and that families can be rebuilt even after they've been shattered by betrayal. Victoria had tried to poison me, but in the end, she'd poisoned herself. And from that poison, somehow, we'd all learn to grow.